Can you please explain to America, if you can, what this means? It appears to us on this side of the water that you're kind of going through the same thing we've been going through, where the politicians are just not listening to the people, and they're going their own way, and Theresa May has paid a heavy price for it. What's happening?
Yeah, I think you put it very well. When the Parliament voted to allow people a referendum on whether to leave the European Union, it never occurred to MPs that the voters might disregard their advice and vote leave. And what has happened in the last 2.5 years since the vote is basically that our political class, not only our MPs, but to be fair, the chiefs of the big rent-seeking corporates, a lot of the civil service, a lot of what Americans would call the deep state, our permanent bureaucracy, diplomats and, charities and think tanks, and the whole establishment have refused to accept the result. And although it looks like chaos, it actually has a very simple cause, which is basically the politicians and their allies in the political elites are not doing what the country instructed them to.
So, Daniel, we are going through the same thing with the border. Europe is going through this throughout, and it is going to cause chaos if politicians don't start listening to the people. Is there a chance that that's going to happen now?
I mean, you'd have thought that a referendum would be the classic case of where politicians have no option but to listen, right? Because that's what a referendum is. And yet, as I say, it never really occurred to them to plan for a leave vote. And so what we've had, there have been some who have, right from the beginning, just tried to overturn the result or disregard it. Now, I know that sounds funny, but if you think about it, it's not uncommon practice in the EU. Whenever they get a result that they don't like in a referendum, they try and rerun it or disregard it. They did it in Denmark, they did it in Ireland, they did it in France, Netherlands. So, they treat public opinion as an obstacle to get around, not as a source of instruction.
And that's why there's unrest in the streets.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't go that far, but there is a mood of unpleasantness and incivility in our discourse, rather like in the US. But for us, it's really new.
Yes.
I've never known.
I meant in Europe
years ago people to fall out.
Yeah, I meant in Europe, not in England.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That is
Yes.
certainly the case, and from a similar cause, And so, but the funny thing is, the politicians who've been so determined to try and frustrate Brexit, what they've done is they've coalesced around this idea of we mustn't leave without a deal. And this, of course, has encouraged the Brussels side when they were told that Britain wasn't going to walk away. Well, what would you do in a negotiation, right? Imagine you were buying a house or something, or selling a house, and the other party says, I want you to know that I'm never going to walk away. I'm definitely going to sign something. What would you do, right? The EU has taken advantage of this weakness to insist on really quite vindictive terms. And the funny thing is, they may have overplayed their hand, which means that there is now quite a strong likelihood that Britain will leave on the 29th of March without there being any deal at all.
Is that a good thing?
Well, it's not where I would have wanted to start, but given where we now are, I think leaving with no deal whatever is far better than signing up to these vengeful terms that the European side has set. And you know what? Life is going to carry on. People will still open their shops and the traffic lights will still work.
Right.
And an awful lot of people who have been predicting economic catastrophe are going to be left looking very silly indeed.
So, Daniel, the Corbyn from, again, across the water and not paying attention to your politics, he doesn't seem like a good dude. He seems anti-Semitic. He's a socialist at best. What's happening with him? Is he going to get into the mix here and possible next prime minister?
Well, it's a scary thought. I mean, here's the thing, Glenn.
So we're reading this right about him?
Well, do you know, it's not often that anyone accuses you of this, Glenn, but I think you have understated the situation. It's a common thing in politics that we use strong language, we use strong words, and we can devalue it. And then when you're left with the genuine article, it's difficult. You've almost run out of vocabulary.
Yeah.
But let me put it like this. Here is, for the first time in British history, a party leader who was on the other side during the Cold War, who regrets the outcome of the Cold War. He has never seen a communist dictatorship that he hasn't defended. Chavez, Castro, the Soviet Union, he's pro-Hamas, he's pro-Hezbollah, he was pro-IRA. In fact, there has never been a quarrel that has involved the UK where he hasn't taken the other side, even when we were fighting the Falklands War against a fascist dictatorship in Argentina, right? A fascist dictatorship that disappeared, as they said, leftist agitators and trade unionists, threw people out of planes and so on. He still couldn't bring himself to back Britain. This is the guy that 2 out of 5 Brits voted for at the last election, which is a truly terrifying thought. Now, of course, normally, in a mature democracy like ours, you would say, well, if someone like that has got no prospect of getting in. I mean, he makes Bernie Sanders look like a Republican. There's no chance that anyone would vote for someone like him. But if there is sufficient anger at the way in which the government fails to deliver the Brexit vote, then anything is possible.